Imagine a world where you knew that you mattered and you belonged. The people cared about you because we were so darn good at listening to one another, no matter how different we are. That is what Sidewalk Talk is doing by putting listeners on sidewalks all over the world so that we can practice the art of connecting. Join me, founder and director Traci Rubel, as I interview experts on the fine art of human connection and interview some of our volunteers who've been listening on the sidewalk and even some of the folks that we've listened to. And if you want to volunteer, consider joining us at sidewalk-talk.org. So I don't even know how to begin to introduce you to David Pearl because I think he might be one of my new European best friends. I think I've made like 3 or 4 buddies since living in Europe. And so I have to thank one of our chapter leaders, Adeline Driscoll in Phoenix, Arizona, for turning me on to street wisdom 3 or 4 years ago. And I started sleuthing David out and cold called him. And you'll hear all about my cold calling probably in our conversation, and then I'll be a visitor on his podcast as well. Look, he is a performer, an author, a director, a public speaker. He's kind of fancy. He's been on the BBC. He was an opera singer with Placido Domingo. He was like the youth boy soprano soloist for 4 years at the Royal Opera House. He speaks Italian. He plays the bass. What else has he done? Well, he's going to sing opera on our podcast today, so you better stick around and listen to the whole thing. He works with teams now, like he goes into companies and shakes them up and wakes them up. He has this great book on meetings, Will There Be Donuts, and his latest book called Wonderful, which really links to this really brilliant thing that he does called Street Wisdom. He also was a part-time writer for Stanley Kubrick, who he considers a mentor. I mean, this guy is the Renaissance man. And I have never developed such a fast, intimate, instant friendship with someone. And so it's weird to introduce him. But I hope you fall in love with him the way I have. He has sustained my heart during this pandemic. And wow. Yeah, he's just really real. So I can't, please stay and listen to this whole thing. I just want to share him with you. I just want to share him with you. David Pearl from Street Wisdom, from the Pearl Group, from Opera Circus, from Lively Arts and in-opera companies, improprera companies. Oh my gosh, he's done everything. All right, that was a long-winded intro, David. I couldn't do it any shorter for you, my friend. So, hi, David Pearl. Can you tell that I put my perfume on for you? Can you smell it?
I got that. Smell-o-vision on Zoom. I'm loving it. I expect nothing else from you, Traci, than the extraordinary. Come on.
You know what? I learned about your project, God, I guess it's a couple years ago, from one of our listeners in Phoenix, Arizona, of all place. Said you've got to check out Street Wisdom, and you got to check out this guy named David. He's as weird as you are. And so I was put in touch with one of your producers, and I think actually I kind of was reaching out to you because I was feeling a bit lonely a few weeks ago. I'm like, God, I'm just a little too much for Germany and the UK, and I need to find someone that's as weird as me to talk to. So I'm like, I wonder if I could get David on the podcast. David, can you tell us a little bit about you and like all the cool, crazy, creative, artistic things you do?
Yeah, you're sweet. Yes, I'm super happy to talk about me, but just want to, you sometimes describe yourself as nutty or crazy. Well, I've seen your nonprofit, and actually I've seen you, talking, and you're crazy like a fox. This is the kind of crazy we need. And so I admire what you guys do so much, and I can't believe it's taken us this long to bump into each other on the street, as it were, on the telephonic street. But anyway, my life has been a zigzag, like most people's, right? So I've been seeking, stumbling, blindly falling about the place. I love the word career because it means, if you look it up, to to descend in an uncontrolled manner down the side of a mountain. And that's how it's kind of felt. And there have been times actually um, where I felt really lost. And in fact, part of the wellspring of the work that I do here is my own brushes with mental ill health when I was in my 20s, where I just couldn't figure out what the heck I was doing where I was, because I'd come from a background where there was a kind of professional theme. My father was a dentist and a lawyer, and it's an uber professional and lovely, but came from a Jewish background. Also, I don't know if there's any Jewish people listening, but Tracy, what they say, the definition of a genius is a child of average intelligence born into a Jewish family. So I'm just saying there's a lot of expectation on you. But I had this incredibly strong artistic streak as well. So I was quite bright at the professionally kind of stuff. But I had, from the age of 8, I had been singing at the opera house, and I was really passionate and really inside. Break Me Open. In fact, even today, Break Me Open and Out Comes Italian Opera. I saw opera when I was a kid. Well, I was taken for an audition, and the first person I heard sing was Domingo, and he was standing next to me at the time because we did this opera together, and I was just, I mean, I don't know. It's like Cinderella, you will go to the ball. It was a moment of enchantment. And what I think about that looking back, and I will get to answer your question, or maybe I am answering it, but I think that there's been this thread of enchantment that's gone through my life. I think what my 8-year-old head said when it heard great, incredible beauty coming out of a human's mouth, that's real. It was like, that's not artificial. That's the baseline. That's what the adults have not been telling me, but there's something real about that, truly hyper real about it. And so I think, if you look down my LinkedIn, you'll see that I went to university and music college. I was an advertising writer and a film writer. I worked in advertising by day, opera by night. I have been a kind of, people say Renaissance person. I think undecided is the truth. And I swear, it's only in the last, I think it's maybe, if I'm really honest, I think it's probably the last 5 to 10 years only where I felt it synthesized and, this is what I'm for.
This is what I'm for. When something happened to me as I was just listening to you there, I actually liked that you didn't get heady and sort of give me the bullet point resume CV answer to that question. And I was just, my mind kind of free associated. I'm leading a couples group right now where I've sort of long been wanting to experiment with how to bring couples together outside of a therapeutic setting. And I think couples really need community because we're braver in community than we are inside of a therapist's office. And something you said, in a way, is an answer. So what happened last night is we were talking about how do you get into your centered self and what is the centered self? It's nomenclature that we come up with. But it was the men that came forward with something really provocative. They said, I know that I want to be in my centered self, this curious, compassionate, caring, sort of context sensitive self. But if I enter into that centered self, who the hell am I? Because I'm wrapped up in my identity. And everything that you just said, it felt like you sort of didn't get wrapped up in identity, that you kept giving yourself permission to find your way to that note, to that song, to that out breath. So beautiful. That's what was coming over me as I was listening to you.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way of putting it. Thank you. I mean, you elevate it. What you made me think of is actually, I admire people who do what you just described. I don't always see it myself, although I can. I have been doing a lot of reflective work, and and there's something about, I'm 61, right? So I know I don't look it, Tracy. That's where you say it's extraordinary.
Amazing.
Say that again.
Yes, that's exactly what I thought.
Too late. It's too late. You're off my Christmas card list.
Wait a minute, aren't you Jewish?
There's something about cards?
Even though.
Oh, yeah, okay. Well, I'm assimilated. So Um, we get on with people. No, I think, you know how I think the Quakers say it's, it's the way doesn't open in front of you, it closes behind you. And there's that thing about being able to look back and go, oh, not that, not that, not that, this kind of thing. So I think there is an element of looking back and being able to track my path to here. But at the time, I often felt a sense of I'm not in the right place. That thing that your friends were saying in this thing is who am I? Where am I? I'm off. I'm off my bearings. And it was like a third leg kicking me in the behind, saying, keep going. I had this kind of irritable sense of, I mean, I'm as lazy as you can believe, but there's something that says, come, keep going, keep going. So it's that kind of, it's less you'd like to think I'm an explorer. I just think I was a kind of shifty, irritable, lost person. And actually, and I don't know if we can talk more about this, but I did spend some time on the street actually when I was younger. I found myself wandering around, and I was having mental health difficulties, and it's always given me a kind of sense you can learn on the street, and also it's real somehow on the street. I remember one time, I don't know if this is relevant, but I'm encouraged to wander with you. And I remember one time I was feeling very low, and I sat down on a street, on a bench in Cambridge, which is where I was at university. And out of the corner of my eye, I saw some rough sleepers. They used to be called tramps, and they were like, and the middle class boy in me went, oh my God, they're coming towards me. I need to get some money. And I was looking around in my, my coat for some money. And because they were making a lot of noise, and they had bottles of, of spirit and so on. But as they got close to me, they dropped all that, and they just said to me, are you okay? Do you have somewhere to sleep? Do you, are you all right? And I thought, oh, wow, where have I come to? I realized that, it was so touching and also so scary, because it was like the traditional role had been reversed, and these people could see my pain and see my misery. But I will say, and I don't want to sound Pollyanna about it, for me, the brushes that I had with mental breakdown and stuff were the wellspring of why I'm here today. There's something for me about getting to that very, darkness is part of wholeness was a talk I gave a while ago at Google. And it's just, I think it's marginalized, especially in the world that, we both talk about the corporate world, and it's marginalized that darkness is somehow something to be eradicated. But I think in my life, and certainly in the arts, and certainly in the world we're living here now, there's a way, maybe we can embrace it a bit more, make it part of the wholeness.
Man, there's some serendipity in the time. I mean, in the timing of our meeting. Yeah, darkness in the wholeness. And I often describe myself as a bug in the mud. I said, I don't want to be a guru in the cloud. I'm a bug in the mud. I like to be in the mud.
Yeah.
And the guru in the cloud stuff is for other people. I said, mud feels really good between your toes.
Yeah, I'm loving that. And actually the people that I've met that I really have really moved me and changed my life have got that, at best, enthusiastic student, which you've got. It's like, what can I learn today? I got that wrong. So, I'm often standing as you are in front of people, and there's a kind of, as you say, there's this kind of people they want to give a guru status, because then it's making their time valuable or whatever it is. And that's fine. But I like to think, I only know this stuff because I fell down that hole in the road several times. I think we need to stay, I love that. The bug in the mud. Oh, I love that.
I appreciate you seeing that I like to learn. But the serendipity is I'm actually getting ready to start a 16-week shadow workshop with this deep Jungian mentor. And the whole premise is that we can't actually be whole creative beings unless we do actually own that shadow, because that's where the beauty is in the paradox. That's where soul lives, is in the paradox. Not that you wrestle and one wins over the other, but that you actually hold and honor them both. And yeah, so kind of weird that you said that today, because our first meeting is in a few hours from now.
Well, it is and it isn't. I mean, and if we can segue a little bit, I'm learning about street wisdom the whole time. But, sometimes, and maybe you feel the same about the work you're doing, Traci, but sometimes the work has you. You didn't have the work. You didn't have the idea, it had you, kind of thing, knocked on you. And I thought a lot about Street Wisdom, which is this nonprofit that I made up, lead. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but I guess lead. And although I feel like I'm in the back, and one of the things about it is serendipity, as you mentioned a couple of times, and it's puzzled me and really interested me. I wrote a book about it called Wonderful, about basically looking back over the last 5 to 7 years. I think we've been doing this to try and find out what on earth have we been doing. I mean, I know we've been essentially, what we do is we offer originally it's changed now, but a 3-hour street-based workshop called a walk shop, where you tune up your senses, you ask a question, and you see what answers the street has to give you. You have like a little quest. So it's turning the street, this public space, for many places in the world, it's public, sometimes not so much, into a school, into a place you can learn. And I see you doing the same, and in your way, and it's extraordinary what you do, by the way. And what I noticed is that people who didn't buy into the idea of serendipity or synchronicity, and didn't, in fact, the opposite. I work with lots of very hard-nosed people, if there are such things. But there was something about the quality of the experience that sparked off more serendipity. And I've come to think of it as an expression of our creative essence. And what I mean by that, I think, is that serendipity is only surprising if you think you're a separate human being who ends at your skin. And that's interesting and a comforting thought. But I've done lots of work, as you have, Traci, and I'm sure your volunteers have, where you kind of reach out beyond your skin, creating intimacy at a distance, connecting with the world around you. And the more, of course, you do that, the more you can feel I am you to the stranger in the street, the less disconnected you are. And then, of course, serendipitous things happening, because if you really think things are connected, then why wouldn't I come into your life and yours into mine at exactly the right moment? And I wish I remembered that more often, and I wish we lived more that way, because can you imagine the anxiety that it would dissipate if you could feel, as people often do on Street Wisdom, this world holds me a bit more than I thought. It's cooperating. It's my buddy. I am not alone. I am not a independent chemistry experiment wandering around the void, but actually I am part of this. I am nature, and so on. I mean, I'm getting rhapsodic now, but the more I do it, the more excited I get by it.
You could be as rhapsodic as you want to be. One of my favorite quotes on your website is the quote from someone that said, "Whoa, 3-hour walking around the city workshop was better than like an all-day meditation retreat." And so I'm like, well, I'm going to have to go do this. So I had to go watch some of your videos. I'm like, I'm going to try this shit that this guy's talking about. And it was fantastic. I was having quite a day. There's some emotions I like better than others, but I was filled with rage a couple weeks ago, and it was so hot. And I'm like, damn, this stuff is burning me. And I'm like, I'm going to try David's walkabout, see if this helps. So I'm just like, all right, I need some information on how to be with this rage. And I just walked around and just looked for signs, and I got a couple interesting things. And this idea that you just shared is so beautiful, that the world's your buddy, that you are being held by something. How does that frame even change our mental health and our sense of self and our quality of how we create and what we create?
Also, that's a beautiful way of putting it. I think what touches me about your work is strangers meeting. And it's become an aspect of Street Wisdom that I didn't think about initially, because initially what I enjoyed, because I did it myself first. Obviously, I was figuring stuff out myself. And I love the fact that you could disappear in public. There's something about which you do, anyone who's been traveling knows that they kind of have this kind of invisibility cloak around them somehow, because you're not of the context. Somehow you can do different things, and people don't see you in the same way. Well, it turns out the same is true in your own street. Partly because people are so distracted, Traci, everyone's in their heads and they're worried, and they're not seeing you at all. But over time, it became interesting that people were making connections with strangers, and not just any strangers, the perfect stranger. I mean, I'll give you an example. My wife was doing it, and listen, your family members don't, they don't, they don't pull your leg, right? They tell you. So if it's not working, they will let you know. So Joe wanted to find she was, her question on her quest was not about rage. It was about, although she's lots of that, she's social activist. She wants to know, how do I raise more money for the school? How do I raise money? We're walking around London on a Sunday. There's no one around in the city of London, and it's raining. And she spots, and she's with my son, and she wanted to demonstrate to my son, you can talk to strangers. So she sees two people in the distance. She walks over, and they're like British, so they're trying to hurry the other way. Anyway, she stops these two people, and she says, listen, I'm sorry, it's raining, so I have a question for you. I'm trying to raise more money for my son's school. Any ideas? He was a fundraiser, and she was a school governor. And I cannot tell you the number of times. And this happens, and I'm wondering, I've watched your film on your, on your websites and stuff, and I've been looking into your work a bit. I wonder how many people come away from an experience in Sidewalk Talk and think that was the perfect stranger, right? I'll never forget that. How could that have been more perfect? And that's, I think, I often say to people, once you've done street wisdom, imagine you're the stranger and everyone else is doing street wisdom. How could you be the perfect stranger for those strangers?
I love the way you rebrand that. How could you be the perfect stranger? There's something, what's always hard for me about Sidewalk Talk is people can't get out of their head about helping someone. I'm like, no. Don't do that. You lose the magic now, because now there's an exchange of power. Don't do that. Right. But yeah, there is the perfect. I mean, I remember one of my favorite stories was early on. It was just me and another gal. So only two of us, not a big group. And this guy goes, "You've got to be shitting me." And I said, "What?" He goes, "My girlfriend just broke up with me on text, and here you are. So I'm going to sit down and tell you all about it." And I'm like, I'm so glad we're here.
It's beautiful. I had a dream years ago when Britain started getting very polarized, like it can be at the States and other places. And I had this vision. It was actually of what you do, but it was like, we used to have these little workman's huts, the canvas huts they would put up, and they'd dig up the road. And I said, what we need is on every street corner, we need one of these huts, and in it, we need to be having the conversation. We need to be doing truth and reconciliation. We need to have this thing. And when I saw you doing this, I thought, my God, that's it. The other thing that you did, which inspired me, was right at the moment, I'm thinking of, street wisdom is at its next inflection point where, people come to it to ask where next. Usually they use the streets to kind of map their future out. Well, how did street wisdom find its future? We've got to do a street wisdom for street wisdom. And for the last few weeks, I've been thinking about it. And Vanessa, who's my producer, I don't know what her name is. She does great things. She had said, look at this website. She said, what this lady does, Traci, she puts herself in the middle. She tells you why she does this, and not in such a way that it is ego, quite the opposite. And it's something I'd been leaving out. I hadn't really outed myself about what I felt about the world and, my dreams and nightmares actually about it. And thanks to you, really thanks to you, I've been doing a process, and I just thought, well, if Traci can do it, I'll do it. And it's been super helpful to figure out, you said gun violence and stuff. You were irritated, agitated, driven to action. And actually I am as well, but I hadn't realized it till I saw you said it. So thank you for that.
Wow. Thank you you're being so kind and generous to me. I do want to clarify one thing though. I have a huge fucking ego.
Yeah, but you know what they say, Steiner used to say, there's nothing wrong with your ego as long as it's the size of the earth. And the thing is, if you've got a big ego, get it bigger. The more people, if you can have as much, which I bet you do, you've got as much ego for you as you do for a stranger you've never met in the streets.
That's correct.
Streets of Delhi. That's the kind of ego we need. We need some of this. We need some wise selfishness. We gotta beef it up, because look around. Things are not, a phrase came to me actually when I'd been watching your film, and I thought, we're better than this.
We're better than
We're
this.
better than this. And, you know, we got to get to this. We got to get to it.
So I want a Street Wisdom Sidewalk Talk co-branded merch shirt, a call to arms that says we're better than this.
Yeah.
I feel really inspired by that's it. And I'm better than this, right? I mean, I wish if there was something, I think that when what you're doing in Street Wisdom, I think what we're trying to do at Sidewalk Talk is to put people in touch with that mission. Because you're asking people, you've got to inhabit your environment in a different way. Because it starts there. Because if
Say more about that. What do you mean? That I love that. What is that for you?
well, number one, in your body, when you're walking around the street and you're looking for magic, you can't just have a checklist in your brain. You have to surrender down in there in your skin somewhere, right? Second, letting go of the answer being totally, you know, letting go of it making sense to your left brain and letting your right brain sort of like listening for poetry in a different way. And so to me, this is the ultimate integration of masculine and feminine, if you will.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And I work with a lot of men, and in my therapy work, they come to me because I make it safe for them to be masculine with me and not always know how to talk about their feelings. Right. And not shame them, because I think psychology has become deeply shaming to a lot of men, actually, and said, you know, actually, I think that we're all trying to integrate this poetry and this heart and this humanity. And I'm living in the land of paradox now. Have a huge ego, but have humility, right? Get shit done, but be lazy and daydream. You know what I mean? And Street Wisdom, what you do is you sort of give people a practice ground for practicing that, because the entire time that they're walking about, they have to do all of it. They have to be in their body. They're integrating paradox. They're listening for the poetry. They have to surrender to not knowing, all these things, you know?
Yeah. Boy, you're inside my head right now, because it's taken me all of this time to get to the point to be able to say, Street Wisdom is a practice. I thought it was an event. I thought it was an experience. And because I love events and experiences, everything, you know, I make experiences the whole time. Oh, and by the way, let me just share something with your audience. I'm known as an experienced engineer in business, because if you put the word engineer next to anything, it makes you sound like you're worth the money. So I've been called an experienced engineer for many years. And I think that is a fairly decent description of kind of what I'm interested in. But what I'm trying to do is finding the extraordinary in the everyday kind of thing. So I've done a lot of work in places that, you know, my more creative friends were just like, what are you doing there at some sales conference? But for me, it's been I've been a missionary, if you like, up country. I've gone native and stuff to try and find the magic that's there every second, if you know how to look for it. And one description of experience, which it's taken me a while to craft, but I'll hand to you, because I think this is what you do. In fact, it is what you do from what I've seen, which is a way to think about an experience is a time and place where the normal rules need not apply. And that's how simple I've got it in my mind, which is if you say, okay, this seat, that seat, this part of the sidewalk is now, the rules are different. Boom. That's all the magic you'll ever need. Because when we were kids in the playground, we knew how to do that. You're on a pirate ship. I'm in the sea. No, that's the sea. That's the sea. And if I kill you, you go to the moon. Okay, got that. You know, we have no issue with that. So I just wanted to say that just be aware, you know, I mean, and again, Traci, I'm sure you know this stuff, but it's a very simple date. You know, it's everyday magic when you think, okay, the minute I create a space and give it a name, you've created a system, right? As soon as you enter a system with intention, things are going to get interesting. And that actually sparked something. You mentioned Jung, and I love, and I may be getting this wrong. In fact, I'm almost certainly getting it wrong. But what I fancy, I heard a Jungian friend of mine say is that anything that interests you as you walk around is your future self seeking to manifest in the present. I love that, because I've often said after Street Wisdom, people come back and say, oh, I found this beautiful thing. I said, you do realize that's you. everything you just walk through is you. This way of using in a gracious way, using the world around you as a mirror, not in a self critical way, but just understanding that the experience you're having, you are creating this experience. And maybe when the stranger comes, it's a bit like meeting someone in a dream, because they're creating it as well, and you find a way to create something together, which I think, by the way, you said before, let's do some co-branded, let's play, you said. Yours and mine, our company's Let's Play. And I always feel that the creativity doesn't come from David or Traci, but it comes from the space between us. It comes from that space between those two chairs. It's beautiful what you're doing. Absolutely beautiful.
Well, the feeling's mutual, and I get asked to play all the time with all kinds of people, and I'm kind of curmudgeonly. I say, no, 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 no more. I know I was listening to your book about, bring donuts. Isn't that what it's called? Just bring donuts to the meeting?
Will there be donuts?
Will there be donuts? Sorry, I didn't remember the name accurately. And you were talking about saying yes, and the improvisational. My husband did improv for 8 years, by the way.
Oh, brilliant.
But he's German. So there's a different level. He tried to do it when we were living in the States, and he said, all I can do is be the dumb German, because he goes, he asked me after he goes, what is Cool Whip? And I said, oh, it's this like frothy white, like it's, anyway. And so whenever those kinds of cultural things come up, it wasn't fun. It's great as a couple though, because we've had some really, we fight like normal couples, and sometimes we'll turn it into an improv. Nice. Like I'll just go, oh, I'm 5 years old right now when I just want my way. And he's like, and I don't want to be your daddy right now. You're going to have to go find one, because that's not sexy at all. So we have a lot of fun fighting and bringing improv into our fights, which.
I love that. I mean, that is a meta, what a meta activity, that when you can get to as they say, get to the balcony, you're in the middle of this thing, and you can see that you're playing a part, or it's playing you, that is mastery.
Well, it certainly helped our marriage. So I teach it sometimes to couples. Great. I'll have somebody come in, and I can see that there's a part of themselves that they're not inhabiting and letting be in the relationship. And so I'll say, give me a movie character that has these qualities that you really admire. And they'll say, okay. I said, so I want you to be that character for the rest of the session. And they're like, what? And I'm like, just for the rest of the session, just be in character. And they're like, this is the weirdest couples therapy I've ever been to. And I'm like, but it works. It works.
You know what I sometimes do, and this gets hysteria going, is I'll work, I quite like you, I suspect, I work a lot undercover, I'm working in grown-up situations, and I'm being subversive without them necessarily realizing it, for good, just to tease people awake in a way. But one of the things I love to do is to say, think of something that is not to your taste, like so not to your taste, is the opposite of your taste. And people say, a crocheted toilet roll holder, something like that, in the form of a poodle. And there's also enormous joy in spotting something that's not your taste. And then I'd say, be the person that loves that thing. Who give them a name, the thing, and now explain to me why you love it. Yeah. And it's a kind of Buddhist thing as well, which is getting outside your subjectivity. People don't talk about taste very much, but it's like sense of humor. It kind of defines you, and it feels like, I can't do anything about that. You can. And jumping, I've got an ego like, as big as any, but even since I was a kid, I used to do a game. I was walking along the street. Someone would come along that I just either didn't like or feared or something, or just thought was ridiculous. And as I went past, I would say under my breath, I am you. And I would jump from my body into their jump body and try and walk away in their body. Okay, strange kid, I know. But that game of I am you, I am the person, I'm not me, I'm not stuck in my shoes, I can be you, is, I think, fascinating. And I think that's a thing that can draw us together and give us more compassion and lessen this toxic polarization a lot of us are experiencing at the moment.
The thread line that seems to there are two things that I'm hearing in your sort of story. one, so much around play. Like you're bringing up these really serious topics that I will hear other people talk about in this very esoteric, very serious, very research driven way that almost removes it removes the joy from it. And you just like, no, we're not going to take it that seriously. We're going to infuse so much play there. So that's number one. And then number two, you are wildly subversive and rule breaking. Like you seem to really get off on it. Am I catching that right?
I think I am a closet activist. I don't think I'm out yet, but I think I call myself an artivist sometimes, because I actually do fear. I mean this. I fear the reaction. I'm professionally, I'm quite amazing at conflict situations, because it's like, I'm sure it's like you. It's like I'm a member of the UN peacekeeping, as it were, and bullets go through me. You know, and I've been in some pretty scary situations in various parts of the world and so on and so forth. But actually, the truth of it is, I'm not a full-on provocateur, but I really do like to do it. And I like to do it with people without them noticing it necessarily. I've been through many deeply Sturm und Drang kind of workshops. I cry regularly. I hug the tree. But I feel as though I've been dreamed up as somebody who's got to do light touch, everyday magic, lots of people, keep it light. You can't go to the ashram, you put it out there. And that seems to be where I am. So I'm constantly doing mischievous stuff. Humor is super important. A friend of mine who's now no longer with us, Ken Campbell, used to say, I mean, he was an influencer of mine. I wouldn't say he was a friend. This is far too important to take seriously. And it's always stayed with me, because the problems that we have, and in the progressive movement or wherever you're looking to make the world a better place, is that as soon as we take the problems to be real, they become heavy and difficult to move. So how can you be light? As you mentioned, the paradox, how can you be light about something that is heartbreaking? But if you're not, you're going to get to stay there. It's a very, and just one more thing, and maybe this is again I'm thinking of your lovely volunteers listening in. What you said about paradox, and the paradox is the way I see it. I've come to see it. I'm often in organizations talking to senior leaders, right? And I'll tease them and I'll say, how many people think your job is to like sort out, make decisions about what's right and what's wrong? Most hands go up. I say, yeah, no, I don't think so. I think that the people who work for you do that. I think you're here to live in the paradox and deal with dilemmas. And they go, huh? And I say, yeah, I mean, you're paid to resolve problems where both answers are wrong or both answers are right. Both and or neither or. And you can't do that intellectually. You have to sit in the fire. You have to sit in the paradox. You have to sit in the discomfort. That's what you're paid for. The other people can sort other stuff out. How are you up for it? And that I think is something I learned a bit in the arts, because the art, when Hamlet says to be or not to be, he doesn't expect McKinsey or Price Waterhouse to come and give them an answer. We've done some market research and we've decided that to be is 70% more preferable to not to be. That's not the point. They both have their advantages and their disadvantages. Welcome to real life.
Welcome to real life. God, you are doing soul work inside of the least soulful places in some respects. Yeah, you must piss some people off and make them cry at the same time, I bet.
I think people, tell you what I think, if I'm reading, I think people slightly envy me. I think you often have senior executives saying, gosh, you come, you go, you seem to have a nice life. And it recalls to mind a friend of mine who's a jazz pianist. And he says that he'll do a jazz club and he'll play, and people come up and say, God, I'd love to do what you do. He says, no, that isn't the point. He said, what you mean is you'd like to play the way I play. But what you don't want to do is the 8 hours of practice every day, day in, day out. And so I think I think there might be a little bit of envy, and they might be a bit pissed off in that regard. And also people marginalizing you, like, oh, Traci, she's just a flake. It's a way of like not dealing with what's come up, and that's human thing. But I think that people don't always see the work behind the apparent spontaneity. Do you know what I mean?
Utterly and totally. Utterly and totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you have to, the work that I think I imagine you do is you've sat in the fire of the paradox. I mean, I think that's when you've traveled through to the underworld in those times in your 20s, and you stayed in there, or you said, I am you. I mean, this is you face the fire breathing dragon and know how to do that so you can inspire other people to do the same. That's not something that you learn when you go to Harvard or Cambridge. Sorry.
No, it is not. It is not. I see many people in their 40s and 50s who've kind of, for whom the career game, if you want to call it that, has kind of ceased to hold their attention, and they begin to feel very uneasy because and lost, if you like, and that can lead to your mental health. Although, I mean, you're a professional at this. I'm not sure whether people are having mental health difficulties or having uncomfortable thoughts, and what those, because I think when you're alive, it is uncomfortable. And if I have people come to me and say, I had a friend who came to me and said, I'm considering suicide. And before I could even answer it, I said, of course you are. Anyone who's sensitive like you looks at the world, of course you'd want to consider that. And your point is, I don't know what that's about, other than it's not binary, and it's not clear, and it's not a straight line. I'm fascinated by the fact that, this book, Wonderful, it made me think, why is it when you go to school, the first thing they give you, at least in England, is a ruler, which is a straight, piece of straight, usually wood or plastic. And what they're saying is, welcome to adulthood. Say goodbye to childhood. Everything's going to be straightforward from now on, from A to B with the minimum friction and stuff. And it's they even call it a ruler, which means the king, the queen, yeah? And the word right means, rectus means straight. And of course, there's a sexual connotation to that as well. Error means to wander. And I was thinking, boy, they've tried to keep us on the straight and narrow. And actually, what I'm beginning to feel is the wandering is the new straight and narrow. When the world's as wobbly as ours, you'd have to be nuts to go in a straight line. You'll end up in the wrong place. And so maybe again, what you're doing is you're encouraging people to dawdle, to loiter, to malinger, to meander, to stop, to pause. And you were doing that before the pandemic, and it's powerful. It's like inserting a gap into the A, B, C, D, E, F sequence, this linear sequence, which we've been thinking is real life. Welcoming people into the paradox. It's a powerful thing. And, I just want you to triple or quadruple in size quickly so that everyone can be doing this.
Well, thanks for getting it. And as somebody said to me, they're like, Traci, why do you always want to grow this thing? It's so capitalist of you. And I'm like,
it's a lot of
isn't about capitalism. I don't pay myself. I don't collect a wage for this. I have to say no to a lot of stuff because I can't, operationalize it. But yeah, I want to grow this thing. Because I want, just like I want for I mean, I think everyone, I'm going to have to go get Wonderful now, but I'm going to have to get it not on my Kindle because I'm going to want to hold this one in my hands,
I'll send you one.
Because I already can tell it'll feel like wandering around the streets, and I'm sure it'll be one of the ones.
The cover.
It's very sweet and cute with the little smiley face, and it's already wandering.
And it says the smile is find the wonder in the everyday, every day. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, I can't even remember what I was saying now. I'm just having too much fun.
No, I hear you say you want to grow it. I hear something else as well. As I think there's an urgency in certainly what you're up to, and I think what I'm up to as well, which is this, there seems to be a sort of wave of learning and a wave of forgetting, and they kind of race each other. And I feel like every generation learns, and then we kind of, the forgetting wave comes along. I think what you're doing is there's an urgent need for it, and you want to see it grow uncontrollably almost.
Yeah.
Growing it is it's painful. It's difficult for us to try and grow things, and for your volunteers and everything. It's it's like building muscle. But I think I'd love to see your thing become unstoppable. And one way of doing that, by the way, the reason we make it free, and I think it's the same with you, right, is it kind of bypasses the transactional kind of rules, and it's a bit unstoppable. And what I love about, again, what you do is you need 2 chairs. I mean, you need a lot more than this, but it's simple. And I think if the way we change things is a million simple things. And I love the fact that, by and large, streets are the public domain. They are our property. Now, I know people will try and convince you they're not, but in fact they are. And that's why people take to the streets when they want to express themselves. And I think that turning it into a place not of protest necessarily, but of sort of intimacy and of exchange and of connection, that lovely phrase I saw, which is, an enemy is just somebody whose story you haven't heard yet.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of mutual exchange is as old as time.
Yeah.
And we have kind of forgot it in the noise, and you're refinding it. I think we're doing the same. The power of, there's something inside us. As you said earlier on, sorry, I'm talking so much, but you're doing this to me, Traci. You're doing something. I mean, I talk a lot normally, but I'm excited, so I'm going to keep going. You can cut it out. But you talked about our intelligence is embodied. People are waking up to the idea that you should stretch your legs, and this will help your brain, and move around, and taking a good lungful of air will clear the cobwebs. People are forgetting that your brain isn't in your head; it's in your knees and in your spleen and so your intelligence is embodied, and we know how to walk across the terrain because we've been doing it for countless centuries, and to read symbolic language. There are 4 antecedents, is that right? The people that came before us, generations before, could read, as it were, signs. Read signs, and so can we still. And we do it in dreams for hours a night. And there's just if I've got an insight, it's been that you don't have to stop reading the world symbolically when you wake up. If you're prepared to, as you say, to connect with the poetic, not just the everyday, but if you're prepared to see the magical in the ordinary, you can have a conversation, you can have a dialogue. And we need a dialogue, because the one inside your head isn't great, in my experience. It's not great.
It's designed to keep us safe and not much else.
Yeah.
So it's kind of looking for the danger.
Yeah.
I loved listening to you talk.
Thank you.
Don't do that whole. I'm wandering with you. It's lovely. It's lovely to hear. Well, you're also. I mean, come on. You're saying nice things about me. I'm like, Jesus. Of course, I want to listen to you talk. It feels. No, but I feel. You know what I feel in this conversation? I feel seen for the first time in a long time. It feels really nice. Thank you for offering that.
Well, I'll say this. There's self-interest as well, because I've done a number of podcasts, as you can imagine.
No.
And there's a sort of usually a bit like TED and TEDx and stuff. There's an underlying, it's marketing at one level, and it can be the most lovely in the world, but it's still marketing. It's showbiz. What I often feel is lonely, as you were saying. I feel actually not seen. I mean, I do by my people around me, but not enough seen. And I think that it's important that we join islands up. No, I don't think it's important. I think it's critical. So I think there's probably 1,000 people right now who we could look at the way you and I are looking at each other and talk this way. But because we're involved in our own slightly narcissistic activities, we don't realize that if we were to link up in a light touch way, we're the majority. This is the growing tip. This is changing the world, but we're not totally aware of that. So I am on this call, and I'm saying nice things. I don't know, I'm saying nice things. It's partly like you climb up a mountain and you're hacking through the weeds or whatever. And occasionally you reach a plateau and you pull your nose up and you look over and there is you and a few other people who go, oh my word, hey, I'm here. So I think there's a little bit of that.
I think we're resonating with that together a little bit. Both of our little noses are
Yes.
up over. I'm kind of doing this. Mine's a little bit. Oh my God, there's somebody else up here. This is so great. Can I talk to you? How's it going over there? Oh,
one sort of sister brother thing between our organizations, if we can call them organizations, that I think is really I resonate with is simplicity and playfulness. But simplicity is hard. It's really hard. And it actually takes years and years to dare to say what's really going on. And you do. And you wildly underpromise, and I bet people wildly overdeliver because you've kept it simple. And people say that in business like it's easy. It's not. Simple is much easier to be complicated and blah, 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 blah. So I love that. And that must have been hard won, because partly the danger, I think, is if you're going to be simple, you think people see through it. They go, what? It's just a person sitting opposite a person talking on the street? You're crazy. No, that's it. I mean, amazing. Listening, talking, amazing. It's really amazing.
Well, thank you for that. That's inspiring, because it's a lesson whenever you try to operationalize anything, to make sure that you have volunteers that have the right intention, that aren't out there to save the world, but that are showing up to understand that this is an activist project, and then figuring out how you do raise money so you can at least pay a few people to keep the thing going, right? And all that stuff, and yet keep the simplicity and the ease, and to say no to things that, capitalism, I don't want to make capitalism the bad guy, but I don't know what your experience is like, but it can bring, it can remove the serendipity and magic. It can kind of add the staccato note where you don't actually want one. And I'm like, if we try, someone said, oh, we want to build an app, or you need to have, this. I'm like, I actually am. I've had so many app makers approach us and say, I'm not interested. I'm sorry. It's just not what we're about. Right. Or someone said, you need to have different kinds of groups. I said, no, I don't want none of that. It's going to stay this. And what we're going to add is maybe some training on how to be a better listener to fund the project. But beyond that, that's it. And then, one of our folks, she really wants us to go in and do corporate trainings. I said, I don't know, maybe, but right now we're doing a training and we're doing it in community, and they can take it to their companies. I don't know, but I think that's right. I think getting really clear on, and it's taken me some years to get clear. It's taken me some years to let go of certain aspects of my ego and go, hey, you know what? I'd rather grow steady and true than massive and flaky, or massive and vacant. Right?
I hear you. I mean, I think that capitalistic thing of let's scale. It's like, you know what? Let's not scale. Why about that as an idea? That's just the first sort of twitch. People always say, if you're doing it, do more of it. Why? Why not? Why is that the case? But I think there is something that is, it's a paradox, which is there's something about having enough mass to, I think what it is to make it suddenly become ordinary. If people were doing it on every street corner, you will have won, because people will have stopped seeing it as, you'd have become a verb. Let's street talk it. Let's, and that's a way of maybe working with businesses. You say, we'll do it, but you've got to come out of your businesses and meet strangers on the corner. I mean,
that was my prerequisite. That was exactly it. And they said, oh, but there's insurance and liability. I said, well, the progressive businesses won't care.
No, because guess what? At the end of the day, business people leave the building and walk through the street. And that's why, with Street Wisdom, I felt like I want to play in the space between people's identities. Once you've left your building and before you've gone to be in another building. I noticed, for example, when I put the key in the lock and come home, I can be, I've been doing some stuff that my tiredness doubles because I want to look like a hero when I come through the door. And Joe says, I say, oh, don't ask me. I've just been, but between the identities, there's this free space. And so I think you're very wise. You're very wise. And yet those people in businesses are people. So often I work with people because I work in businesses partly because that's how it's been. But also I came to the way I see it is it's a great place to find people. And where there are people, we can work. And, that's just a different way of looking at it. But
and pay your rent
again,
and get paid.
Yeah, well, there is that. But what I see also this kind of sense of I've thought a lot about this wonderful thing is, when you're wandering, are you brainless? No, you have intention, but you're sort of testing, you're trying, you're making mistakes. You're what the Chinese call, crossing the river by feeling your way across the stones. You're not sitting there looking at the map. You're trying. Oh, ouch! No, that is a paradoxical thing, I think, because people say leaders know the way. Well, I don't think that is the case anymore. You look at the really successful leaders, they're the ones prepared to get lost, retract, retreat, say they were wrong, move. That's the future. And I do think there is some urgency to it. I describe myself in the book as an optimist who worries a lot. And I am not guru-like at all and feel like, no, the Tao is emerging and that awful thing that just happened, let that be just, no, I think, no, I can't do that. I'm not sure you should do it, but I can't do it. So I feel like we've got to hold this paradox of there's a certain urgency and yet we can enjoy everything that happens. It's a tricky one. I struggle with it.
It's beautiful. Well, I could talk to you for hours and hours, but I know that, our podcast guests are probably thinking, okay, David, Traci. No, they're not thinking that, but they're thinking, we're really jealous because we would like to be on the other end of David right now too. Gosh darn it, Traci, get out of the way so that we can talk to him because you're just fantastic. And I feel lit up and I'll probably carry you with me in my heart for the rest of the day, feeling seen and known on some level. So I really appreciate that. And I'm totally in support of everything you're doing. So you just say the word and I'm there. But I think I mentioned to you we have this ritual, so I can't wait to see what you're going to come up with. No pressure. It could be, you could fart and I'd be stoked, but I get out of the way and give you the mic to speak directly to the listeners that listen on sidewalks all over the world. Anything that you want, a wish or words of wisdom directly to them.
Oh, wow. Well, we've really been talking a lot. I'm going to sing something, actually.
Yay!
We started with singing, and I wanted to, I just thought I don't know how it'll come across on Zoom, but maybe go back to where we started, which is this little kid going, oh, "That's real." And I'll just sing a phrase or two from Italian phrase or two, because I feel as though, they call the vocal cords in Italian the second sex. And there's something about it. It's a way of contacting people at a distance, because you've got this, it's basically you're warming the air inside you and it's making vibrations, and then that's going straight into somebody else's ear and into their body. So it's body to body. So it's a way of me contacting your volunteers, across the world. Also, it's not linguistic. We're talking a lot, but most of it, I bet the really important stuff that your participants get is the feeling. It's this feeling of attention that I'm sure your volunteers give. And if I could, advice is probably not a good idea, but I would say, being lost and feeling lost are not the same thing. We're all lost. We're all stumbling our way. And some people feel lost, but if you can enjoy that feeling of not know, it's perhaps a cliche, but if you can enjoy that feeling of not knowing, that every time you're improvising with something, you don't know what's coming up, I think you're probably, more about direction than anyone on earth at that time, I would guess, because you're keying into what wants to happen. Anyway, something tells me that I should sing a bit of a song, and it's really not the song, it's the quality of that somehow Italian music seems to have. And this is just this is a song that starts basically, it's dawn is the fact. It's dawn, but the tenor is saying, the light is fading and my love and the dream is going, but actually I could let go of the dream because I have the reality. It's all about love. It's all about love. But just let me see if I can find something just to sing you a little bit. I'll sit back from the mic so it doesn't blow your head off.
I'm excited.
So this is how the Italians say it's dawn. They don't do it in a Google tweet, they L'alba separa dalla luce l'ombra e la mia volontà dal mio desire. O dolci stelle, è l'ora di morir, un più divino amor dal cielo vi sgombra. So that's a little bit of...
It's a hell of a lot better than a tweet.
L'alba separa dalla luce l'ombra. How could you not love that? How could you not love that? Ah,
Man, Jo is a lucky gal.
I met her, by the way, when someone sent me to sing under her window. I swear it's true. I swear that's another story for another podcast.
Well, I'm going to come up and visit you guys and stalk you. So that's it. I'm not leaving for a year and a half. So David, it was a pleasure. For everybody that's listening, there's all kinds of information about David's book, Wonderful, about his great work called Street Wisdom. You may decide you want to take up leading some street wisdom walks, and you should definitely do it in your own life all the time. I recommend every day, actually. Yeah.
We do check it out. We do them online as well, which sounds, but in fact, they're enabled from the laptop, but they're out in life.
Love it.
But we just use the laptop like a radio or your phone like a radio. So
I love that. I love that. And hopefully we'll get to shout out your podcast by the time this goes live too, so we can send people over there.
And you must come on it, Traci.
Oh, I will. Any chance to play with you, I will. Come play.
Okay.
Be well.
Thank you for being here and listening to this episode of the Sidewalk Talk podcast. If you like what you heard, tell your friends, tell your family, like and comment on the podcast publisher that you're listening from, and subscribe. This will help us get the word out about changing our culture to one of